So, Assalamu alaikum everyone. This poem, as I mentioned yesterday, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, I'm a published author and a published poet. And I wrote my first published book, is actually called A Unique Elegy, Standing Upright. And this is a Karbala Maqtal. And it's a poem that I wrote because as an Arabic speaker, as a second language, it was difficult for me to connect to the Lutmiya and the Nasheed in Arabic because the dialect doesn't match my dialect. And I couldn't connect to the Urdu or to the Farsi very easily. So as an English poet, I did my best and I tried to write a poem that I could connect to and that I hope that other English speakers can connect to in order to experience the tragedy of Karbala and experience. Last night, I read from the opening of the book, and tonight I'm actually reading from the chapter on Hussein. So just to give a little bit of background, at this point the battle has begun. All of the companions have been martyred, and all of the family have been martyred except for Imam Hussein and a few of the last people who were involved in this battle. And so it's at a very high time that I'm beginning this reading, inshallah. Can you hear me okay? This is coming from A Unique Elegy. I pray to you, O Allah, the benefactor, to show your kindness to us in straitened times. Imam Hussein asked for his suckling child, Abdullah Ali Asghar, to bid him farewell before victim to heinous crimes. I beg you, O Allah, the indulgent, to grace us with lenience when we request our need. Hussein asked his foes for water for his babe. Their response was heartless, makes hearts bleed. I ask you, O Allah, O nourisher of the little baby, to provide for powerless children, make them well fed. Imam bent to kiss his son with loving affection. Bin Kahl shot at the babe, pierced his neck, and severed his head. Hussein said, every hardship is easy upon me when Allah Almighty is the beholder. And said, Allah, bestow on us that which is better and take our revenge from each evildoer. Imam dismounted from his horse and with his sheath dug his infant's grave. Then he stood facing the army, his sword unsheathed. He renounced life, for death his heart did crave. Hussein elegized himself, while this world is pleasant, the reward of Allah is magnificent and meritorious. And if the body is created for death, martyrdom in the way of Allah makes man victorious. So I complain to you, my Lord, as our Imam and Master did that day. O Allah, I complain to you how they treated the son of the Prophet of your daughter. They betrayed. The grief that overwhelms makes the heart turn towards its Lord and ally. From you do I seek help when in fear, cry when sad. Your help I seek in my weakness, and upon you I rely. Our eyes meet no rest, nor our tears any end. We pray our lamenting cries, to our Lord do ascend. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين هدى للمتقين والقاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. In the universal greetings of Islam, I greet you, brothers and sisters, with Assalamu alaikum. I want to be here tonight. I made a specific dua before I came tonight, asking for the people who needed to hear this majlis, who needed to be here and who were open to receiving it to be here tonight. And as you see, there are not many here, so you have been chosen by Allah to be here. So I just want to make that known. my talk tonight is covering two brief topics. The first topic is the three critical relationships that we have in our life. And the second part, or the fourth part, is going to be what are the results of these three critical relationships. So I'll give you an overview. The three relationships that are critical in every human being's life. First and foremost is Allah, is our relationship with Allah. Second, our relationship with our own self. And third, our relationship with others. And I'm going to go through some of these points. The fourth and final section of this talk will be talking about the results of improving the three critical relationships in life. So first we begin with the most important relationship in our creation is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The entirety of Ashura was doing what is right for the pleasure of Allah. All throughout the dua, all throughout the maqtal, all throughout the entirety of that event, you see not only Imam al-Hussein, but each of the companions, each of the family members, and each of the ladies remembering Allah in His majesty. And although it was a very trying circumstance, they not once lost sight of their relationship with Allah. They not once saw their life as disconnected from Allah. And they not once saw themselves as burdened by Allah, but they saw themselves as blessed by the opportunity to gain martyrdom. Who is Allah? The Prophet and the Imams dedicated the entirety of their lives to informing and guiding us as to who Allah is. And I open this talk tonight with the sermon number 1 from Nahj al-Balagha, written by Imam Ali alayhi salam. And I'm not going to read the entirety of this sermon, but I encourage you on your own to read the entirety of this sermon because it is extremely beautiful. But I'm just going to read a passage. Praise is due to Allah, whose worth cannot be described by speakers, whose bounties cannot be counted by calculators, and whose claim to obedience cannot be satisfied by those who attempt to do so, whom the height of an intellectual courage cannot appreciate, and the divings of understanding cannot reach. He for whose description no limit has been laid down, no eulogy exists, no time is ordained, and no duration is fixed. He brought forth creation through His omnipotence, dispersed winds through His compassion, and made firm the shaking earth with rocks. The foremost in religion is the acknowledgement of Him. The perfection of acknowledging Him is to testify Him. The perfection of testifying Him is to believe in His oneness. The perfection of believing in His oneness is to regard Him pure. So this is coming from Nahj al-Balagha, from Imam Ali. Now I want to share with you a fairly commonly known hadith Qudsi. It's one of the hadith, which means a hadith Qudsi is that which was not from the Quran, Allah speaking directly, but it's Allah's voice revealed through Prophet Muhammad. So this is Allah speaking, related to us by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Allah says, I was a hidden treasure, and I wished to be known. So I created a creation, mankind, then made myself known to them, and they recognized me. There's another quote which says, neither my earth nor my heavens can contain me, but the heart of a believing servant can. And there's one more hadith I'd like to share, which is coming from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, indeed Allah Ta'ala has reserved certain individuals among the inhabitants of earth as His containers. The containers of your Lord are the hearts of His pious slaves, and the most beloved of hearts to Allah are the softest and most tender. This is the majesty of Allah, and this is the beginning of our relationship with Him. I'd like to recite a verse from the Quran, Surah number 7, verse 143, in which Musa is communicating with Allah. And Musa, it says, and when Musa came at our appointed time, and his Lord spoke to him, he said, my Lord, show me yourself, so that I may look upon you to see me. But look at the mountain. If it remains firm in its place, then you will see me. But when his Lord manifested His glory to the mountain, He made it crumble, and Musa fell down in a swoon. Then when he recovered, He said, "Glory be to you. I turn to you, and I'm the first of the believers." Now I want to pause right here and just think about how majestic Allah is, and how majestic are we, that we are the only one of His creation that can capture His essence in our hearts. The mountains crumbled to dust before the majesty and glory of Allah, but our hearts are supple enough, tender enough, and strong enough to contain the majesty of our Lord. I want you to remember this going forward, inshallah. So my first practical tip is to remember the journey to worship. And there's a nasheed by an artist named Talib al-Habib. He's one of my favorite nasheed artists. And he has a nasheed called Caravanserai. If you're interested, I can send it to you after. But in this song, there are 9 steps. And I'm going to read what they are and then give a brief exposition of each of those stages. These are the stages of how does a person get to know Allah? How does a person develop relationship with Allah? And how does a person begin to worship Allah? There's a process, there's a journey. So the first step is remember and you will yearn. Yearn and you will seek. Seek, seek, you will be found. When you're found, then you will learn. When you learn, then you will understand. Understand and you will feel. When you feel Him, then you will love. And when you love, then you will worship. Then you worship. This is the nasheed of Talib al-Habib. And I want to share with you how some of these stages happen in each of our lives. So first, remember and you will yearn. How do we remember Allah? We remember Allah by looking at a scene of nature, by being in the forest, at the ocean, or in the mountains, seeing the majesty of His creation, seeing the majesty of the world around us, the intricate nature of the insects, the intricate nature of all of the animal kingdom, the intricate nature of our own creation and how our bodies function. All of the majesty of creation, of nature, is the first place where we remember our Lord. Because when you see the majesty, all of the signs in this world, there's only one question that you ask. Who made this? Who is the one who created all of this majestic beauty? And when you remember Allah, you will yearn. You will yearn to know Him. When you yearn, you will seek. Because you realize there must be someone who created this. There must be something. So you'll go looking for it. You'll seek Him. Now, one of the interesting points in the nuances of this nasheed is that you cannot determine when Allah finds you. Allah finds you. You don't find Him. The next line is seek, seek, you will be found. Allah finds us. But He always allows Himself to be found by us when we seek Him. And again, this ties together with what we said yesterday, which Allah is responsible for the results of our actions, but we are responsible for our intentions and putting forth the effort. So seek, seek, and Allah will allow Himself to be found by us. When you're found, then you will learn. Learning is the beginning stage of where we get to know the laws of Allah, the beauties of Allah, the relationship with Allah, the mannerisms with Allah. All of this is the learning period. When you learn, you will understand. That goes without saying, that as you learn, you understand the depths of reality. Understand and you will feel. The heart was designed to feel Allah and to feel humanity, to feel our own souls. We are not robots. Like much as people would like to imagine in this modern century. Machines are replacing people all the time. But we are not robots. We are above robots. We are more than robots. We feel with our hearts. And that's what makes us unique among all the other creation. None of the animals have hearts that they feel the way that we do. So understand and you will feel. When you feel Him, then you will love. And that's the most beautiful feeling on earth. To feel and experience the love of Allah is one of the most majestic feelings. But you can't talk about it. You can only experience it. Worship. And then you worship. So I wanted to open with this foundation that our first, most critical relationship of all relationships that we have in this life are with Allah first and foremost. Moving on to the second, the relationship with ourself. with our own soul. The second most vital relationship is our life with our relationship with our own soul. And this is a fairly common hadith. Many people have heard the beginning part of it at least, in which Rasulullah says, one who knows his soul knows his Lord, or one who knows his self knows his Lord. But there's a completion to that hadith which is not commonly read. And it says, one who knows his self knows his Lord, so you must gain the knowledge that helps you to act in the right way, and it is sincerity. So what's the key to getting to know yourself and getting to know your Lord? Sincerity. That's one of the missing gems that isn't often mentioned from the minbar. And I'd also like to share one of the hadith attributed to Imam Ali alayhi salam, in which he says, seek knowledge even if it is in China. In this knowledge, you will know yourself, and then you will know your Lord, glorified and majestic be He. So again, the same idea. Know yourself, and you will come to know your Lord. Knowledge of our soul is so vital because it allows us to live life fully. We cannot live. If you do not know who you are, you're only living a shadow of your life. All of us ask the question, who am I? But we are not our jobs. We are not our education. We are not our race. We are not our gender, our position, our status, our class, our birthplace, our marital status, our children. That is not the definition of who we are. And I want to share with you, and if you want to look this up, it's actually a beautiful series. Khalil Jaffer is another scholar, and he has a series on YouTube called The End of Negative Suffering. And in that talk, he calls all of the above your life situation. And he juxtaposes that with your life, your true life. Your life is different from your life situation. How much money you make is only your life situation. It's not the entirety of who we are. Now, some people talk about, and I'm sure you've heard this before, people say, oh, I'm a human being having a spiritual experience. To the contrary, we are spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We're only in this body for a short time, 50, 60, 80, 100 years. But our spirit lives on eternally. We are spiritual beings. The creator of our soul is Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most majestic creator in this and every other universe. And all of our honor, dignity, and status comes to us because we were created by the masterful creator of all. Now, our talk last night was about social justice, and social justice is a very strong, permanent theme in the story of Karbala. But do you know why social justice is important? Have you thought about it? Why does it matter to be socially just? It's because the same honor, status, and dignity that Allah bestowed upon us, He gave to each and every one of His creation, and they share in being honored by Him. Social justice is protecting the honor of our siblings in creation, who have the same honor that we do. Why is it wrong? Why is the worst sin on earth to take another human life? Because that life is just as sacred as your life. Your life is sacred, and their life is sacred. That's why murder is the worst of all sins. The sanctity of our life, the value that we have as creation, comes to us because of our Lord, the masterful Lord who created us. Now, I'd like to take a moment and think about the honor and the dignity that Allah has created us with. And I'd like to compare that with Christianity, which teaches the original sin doctrine. The idea that we were born in sin, that if you're a baby and you die before baptism, you go automatically straight to hell. That is a concept believed by some other people on this earth. They believe that we are inherently flawed, that we are inherently evil, that if we are not saved by grace, we are destroyed. But Allah says, the Quran says, and Islam says the opposite. We are created and upheld with honor, dignity, and purity. And Allah created us perfect. And so this is all talk. Where's the proof? So I'm going to start with the verse of Quran that I recited earlier before we started this majlis tonight. And it's Surah At-Teen, chapter number 95, ayah number 4. We have indeed created mankind in the best of molds. So pause for a moment. What does this mean? What does it mean that Allah says He created mankind in the best of molds? Isn't that saying that we have honor and dignity given to us by Him? Isn't that what it says? Does it say anything different? Now the verses continue, and so I'm going to read the translation of the next two verses as well. The next verse says, "Then do we abase him, mankind, to be the lowest of the low, except such as believe and do righteous deeds, for they shall have a reward unfailing." But for all the encompassing proof, I want to share with you one telling of the creation story in the Quran. The creation story is the story of the creation of Adam and Eve and their interactions with the angels and with Shaitan. I'm going to read only one passage from Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter number 2, ayahs 30 until 35. But I want you to bear with me because this is going to be pivotal for the talk. "And when your Lord said to the angels, I am going to place in the earth a Khalifa." Khalifa means vicegerent or representative. "They said, what?" The angels said, "What? Will you place in it such as shall make mischief in it and shed blood? And we angels celebrate your praise and extol your holiness?" Allah responded, "Surely I know what you do not know." And the verse continues, "And He taught Adam all the names, then presented them to the angels. Then Allah said, O angels, tell me the names of those if you are right." The next verse says, "They, the angels, said, Glory be to you. We have no knowledge, but that which you have taught us. Surely you are the knowing, the wise." Then Allah said, "O Adam, inform them of their names." Then when he, Adam, had informed them of their names, Allah said, "Did I not say to you that I surely know what is hidden in the heavens and the earth, and that I know what you manifest and what you hide?" So I just want to pause for a moment. What just happened here? The angels were questioning Allah, not in an insubordinate way, but as inquiry. They're allowed to ask questions. They asked, "Are you going to create something on earth that's going to spread mischief and shed blood?" And Allah says, "I know something you don't know." Then Allah gave the angels a task. What did He tell them to do? He said, "Name this. Tell me what the name of this thing is." And what did they say? They said, "We can't do it. We don't know. We only know what you've given us." Then Allah asked Adam, and Adam gave them the names. Adam has the ability to name. The ability to name is one of the unique human characteristics. We are able to take old knowledge and derive new knowledge. That's the ability to name in the Quran. We have the ability to take old information and generate new information. Obviously, we're living in a technological era. The knowledge we have access to now is very different than what we had access to 1,000, 2,000, or 5,000 years ago. This is the ability to name that Allah has described in the Quran. This is what He blessed Adam with that the angels didn't have. The angels don't know anything except for that which they are given. And we can create knowledge. We can learn and understand and develop. But more importantly, do you realize Adam has just been created? Adam, a brand new creation, just outdid the creation of light. Angels are created of light, and Adam just showed them up, effectively. Right? How do you think Adam would feel in this situation? He's just been created, and he's already outdone the angels. How would you feel if on your first day of the job, you mastered something that people have been struggling with for months? How would you feel? There is honor, dignity, and karama, majesty in us, and nobility. Now the verses continue. "And when we said to the angels, Allah, make obeisance, make sujood, prostrate to Adam, they did obeisance, they did sujood, they did prostration." Now pause for a moment. Before continuing, I want to ask you, how does Adam feel having row upon row upon row of angels at every level above him? All of them are prostrating before him. What does that feel? What do you feel just imagining that scene of all of these angels bowing before you? What does that give us? Each and every one of us, the angels bow before. Allah created all of us just like our father Adam. We are all honored with great dignity. Self-worth is a gift that Allah gave us. It doesn't require status. It doesn't require education. It doesn't require beauty, a spouse, wealth, position, power, or strength. It is a gift that God gives to each of us. It is literally our birthright. Every human being, not just Muslims, not just Christians, not just Jews, not just atheists, every human being has inherent honor and dignity inside of them. But again, going back to Surah Ad-Din, some of them get dropped to the lowest of the low unless they believe and do righteous deeds. But even then, we are not unworthy if we don't believe. Allah has still given us honor and majesty. It is a birthright, and it's up to us to claim it. Now, there are many other lessons from the creation story, and I'm not going to go into them all. Just to continue the verse, Iblis did not make sujood. He refused, and he was proud, and he was one of the unbelievers. So I just want to summarize the point because I don't want to get into the details. But Shaitan makes Adam and Eve fall, approach the tree by affecting their self-talk, the messages that they tell themselves, getting them to doubt themselves. What is Shaitan's ultimate goal? His ultimate goal is not to get us to sin. Sinning is simple. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. What does he really want you to do? He really wants us to loathe ourselves, doubt Allah, and see ourselves as small. Then he can get us to do any sin he wants. Because if you see yourself as not worthy, then you'll be inclined to go towards sin. But if you believe you have nobility, you'll believe that you are above committing a certain sin. It's beneath my dignity to commit this sin. Why could I do that? How could I do that? I have too much honor and pride as a human being, as a creation of Allah, to violate this law. And I'll give you an example that everybody knows. When you feel good, you might be strong and say, I'm going to stick to my diet, I'm not going to eat this cheesecake, right? But if you're feeling really down on yourself, and you're having a bad day, and you're sad, and you're feeling miserable, you might eat the whole pint of ice cream, right? Why? Under normal circumstances, you're above that. You feel too much pride to eat a whole package of ice cream. But when you feel low, you give in, because it doesn't matter anyway. Whether I gain weight or not, it doesn't matter. And I mentioned yesterday, the mantra of Shaitan is it doesn't matter. It does matter. You do matter. Your soul does matter. And Allah believes you're worthy. But if you believe badly of yourself, then you're prone to sin, because you have belittled yourself and you are believing the waswas, the whispers of Shaitan. Now let that sink in. And now remember Imam al-Hussein. Imam said, a person like me does not swear allegiance to a person like Yazid. It was beneath his dignity. Not that he's arrogant, not that he's proud, but that he's recognizing the truth that a person of his caliber does not swear allegiance to a person of Yazid's caliber. Imam Hussein also said, death with dignity is better than life with humiliation. I don't know if you've ever heard this quote before. I'd rather die standing than to live on my knees. It's a common saying, talking about usually revolution. But the idea of, I would rather die standing than to live on my knees. It's exactly what Imam al-Hussein said. Death with dignity is better than life with humiliation. And to close this section, I'm going to share with you the spiritual hadith of Imam Ali. This is among the most beautiful hadiths, and it's by far one of my favorites. It says, your cure is within you, but you do not know. Your illness is from you, but you do not see. You are the clarifying book, through whose letters become a small body, but the greatest world unfolds within you. You would not need what is outside yourself if you would reflect on yourself, but you do not reflect. So what is the second most critical relationship that we have in our life? Our relationship with our soul. Imam Ali is telling us you must reflect on your soul, understand your honor and dignity, and move forward. So first we understand Allah, and now we understand our own soul. And now we move on to the third relationship, our relationship with others. The third most critical relationship is with others. And in this topic, I want to share about how we get damaged and how that affects our relationship with others. We are created pure, but some of us get damaged along the way. It doesn't take away from our worth, but we must heal from damage. People have different, so I want to talk a little bit about what this idea of damage is. All of us growing up have experiences. Some are harder than others. Each hard experience, whether you call it trauma, whether you call it spiritual, emotional, physical challenges, spiritual challenges, we all experience difficulty, conflict. All of us experience these things. And these, when they happen to us, they damage us. And it's possible to be healed through it. And that's what like all of social work and psychology and all of these other helping sciences are all about. And that's why they're there, right? And Islam has its own complete chapters on this topic. But people have to heal from the damage that they receive. And if they leave it unexamined, a lot of people stuff their feelings. Oh, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to suck it up. But one of the things that is so important is to experience these feelings and to heal from them and to think about them and to explore them and to find and come to closure on those damages. Now, I want to share with you that different people have different capacities to give and receive love. And love is the essence of a healed relationship. Love flows naturally from one healed person to another. If you look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you look at the life of all of the Imams, they were imbued with love for other people and for other creations. Their love flowed upon everyone that they touched, so much that people just in their company got won over to the path of Islam because of the love that they exuded. But the capacity to give and receive love is affected by our woundedness. Psychological, spiritual, physical, emotional trauma that we experience as we grow older. It affects our ability to give and receive love. You can heal. Every human being has the potential to heal. But it's something that you have to work at. And I'd like to share with you a concept that is very important for understanding how we have difficulties in our relationship with other people. They're called the 4 inclinations. And these 4 inclinations are a survival mechanism. There's something that is at root in every human being, of every culture, every age, every religion, every race, every gender, everyone. It's a survival mechanism. And the more you feel threatened or insulted or wounded, the more you're going to interact with these 4 inclinations. And the more at peace you are, the less these 4 inclinations come into play. What are they? Number 1, to look good and make other people look bad. To look good and make other people look bad. Number 2, to be right and make other people wrong. Number 3, to validate the self and invalidate the other. And number 4, to dominate others and not be dominated. So the first practical tip is to look for this in the world. Not only in others, but especially in your own self. But you might be wondering, give me an example of these. I don't understand. What are you talking about? So I'll give you an example. Imagine that you're in a classroom setting, and somebody raises their hand. The teacher asks a question, what's 2 plus 2? And somebody raises their hand and says, oh, it's 5. Somebody in the back of the class is going to say, oh, how stupid are you? You don't even know that 2 plus 2 is 4. Why would they make a comment like that? If they're assuming children, but it could be adults, right? There are many people who insult each other in a classroom setting when they make a mistake. Why would they be doing that? What do they have to gain? They look good and make other people look bad. They make themselves right and they make other people wrong. They are validating their own self because they had the knowledge and the other person didn't. They're invalidating to be dominated. So that's one example. Showing off has a lot to do with these 4 inclinations. Dominating physically, oppressing people, A lot of injustice happens when bullies, the entirety of bullying is these four inclinations. Bullies, why do they bully other people? Because they want to dominate others and not be dominated. Because they want to validate themselves and invalidate the other. Because they want to look good and make other people look bad. It's a epidemic, these four inclinations, when we have hurts, woundedness that is not addressed. So these are the four inclinations, and this is something that you can use in your everyday life just to keep your eyes open. Now that you've heard of it, you can look for it, and you can see when are you exhibiting it. There are times that I feel like I want to correct somebody, and I say, wait a minute, am I trying to do this to dominate this person, or am I actually trying to contribute something to the knowledge? Am I actually trying to help them out? And again, this is what we talked about yesterday. Guard your intentions before, during, and after an action. Allah judges us based on our intentions, not the actions that we do, and not the results of our actions. So again, take the time to question our emotions, question our intentions, understand why are we doing what we're doing. Now, as a social worker, and I am a social worker by profession, we know that grieving losses is necessary for overcoming difficulties, for accepting what happens in life, and for finding peace after a loss. Every loss that we have in life can and should be grieved. This is the emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical work of exploring the soul that allows us to interact with others in a better, healthy, and wholesome way. By examining ourselves and healing our internal damage, we ensure that we don't perpetrate that same damage onto the others around us. And we can have healthy relationships with the people in our quarter. But most people run away, like I said before. They stuff their feelings, and they never deal with the pain of grief. They stuff it into a bottle. And as the bottle fills, it gets tighter, more pressured, until one fine day it bursts. All over your friend, all over your spouse, all over your parents, all over your children, all over your coworkers. We have to take the time to heal our damage now, so we don't impact and inflict that damage upon other people. As lovers of Ahlul Bayt, we have a built-in mechanism of getting in tune with our emotions, our losses, and our grieving. We're actually one of the most blessed communities in that respect. Other communities among Muslims and non-Muslims do not have this emphasis on feeling the full breadth of human emotion. We have these programs. These programs allow us to experience sadness, to experience grief, to experience painful emotions, and to learn the lessons from them. Even by having the practice of grieving our losses for Imam al-Hussein, it helps us to grieve our own personal losses. How many of your Shia friends have told you, I know you're having a difficult time, but what was your difficulty compared to Imam Hussein's? It's not the most supportive thing to say, honestly, but it's still true. People who mourn the loss of Imam al-Hussein, they can say, you know, you're right. Imam al-Hussein's suffering was so much greater than mine. I have suffering, I really do, but I can grieve my suffering and grieve my loss and move forward. And in my personal reflection, I noticed that the lovers of Ahlul Bayt have a more sensitive demeanor than many of the other Muslims and many of the other people of other traditions. The empathy that we feel for each other, these commemorations of Muharram, these commemorations of Imam al-Hussein, and the great losses that were inflicted, give us a certain compassion towards other people. And I don't know if you've experienced this. I've experienced it. I may be biased, but I don't know who a neutral observer is, but I've seen that the people in the Ahlul Bayt community who practice have a certain softness to them, and a certain compassion and generosity and grace. And it's important that we encourage that spirit among ourselves. Other communities who have the Imams of Ahlul Bayt model that compassion for us. And other communities who have other harsher, more stubborn, more power-hungry role models, that's what they idolize and that's what they aspire to be. But we have the absolute, again, like I said, the Prophet and the Imams were the most compelling in their location. And that's our example. And so by default, that rubs off on us, inshallah. Now, I want to make this caveat point. We don't need to get stuck in grief. Social workers will tell you, once you finish grieving, you move on. But experiencing the grief in our personal tragedies and our personal losses is very important for getting to that healing. And I'll give you a sort of a practical tip, or maybe a secret of the trade. You know that you've dealt with your trauma or your damage or whatever issue it is, if when you talk about it, you don't get emotionally charged anymore. Now, I mean, usually people in this community don't really have breakups and stuff, but you know, if you're talking about, oh man, I remember I had this coworker, or this boss, and you had a bad relationship and you got fired, and you're still talking about it 20 years later, and every time you talk about it, you get flared and you feel angry and you feel upset, the fact that you're still feeling emotionally charged by that event means you haven't made peace with it. That's one of the tips that can be an indicator for you to know if you've healed a particular struggle, or if there's more that you need to do. And again, it's a continuum. There's progress along the way. It gets easier. It really does. Okay. So now, that's the third relationship, the relationship with others. Now you may be wondering to yourself, Omar, you've talked to me about all of these critical relationships with Allah and with myself and with others, but what is the benefit of it? Why in the world would I do this? What is the result of doing this work, of investing this time, energy, and effort in purification of the soul and getting to know Allah? The Quran says it best. In chapter number 57, ayahs 22 and 23, I'm just going to read the translation. No evil befalls on the earth, nor in your own souls, but it is in a book before we bring it into existence. Surely that is easy to Allah. So that you may not grieve for what has escaped you, nor be exultant at what He has given you. And Allah does not love any arrogant boaster. So I'm going to read that second verse again. Why do we have calamities in life? So that you may not grieve for what has escaped you, nor be exultant at what He has given you. What is that in a nutshell? Imam Ali says that this verse defines zuhud. Zuhud is abstinence, being abstinence from the world, not being attached to the world. It means tranquility. It means not being overly attached to the things that happen in our lives. Because as we mentioned yesterday, this life is like a drop in the ocean. And the next life is like the entirety of the ocean. It's such a small amount of time. It's not a big deal. But the quality of our afterlife, that ocean, is determined by the way that we live this drop today. So how do you have peace and how do you have tranquility? By establishing and improving your relationship with Allah, your relationship with your own soul, and your relationship with other people. You will have that tranquility and you won't get upset at the different things that happen in your life. You won't be overly pleased at the good things that you get, and you won't be overly sad at the things that you lose. You will have peace. And the Quran says it, once again, says it best. Chapter 13, verse number 28. Those who believe and whose hearts are set at rest by the remembrance of Allah. Now surely by Allah's remembrance are the hearts set at rest. That's what you get. If you do the effort, if you get to know Allah, you get to know yourself, you get to know other people, you share love and compassion, your heart is at rest. And just as an aside, do you know what all the materialists say? All the Western capitalists, all of the money mongers, they tell you if you get enough money, you'll be happy. If you just make enough money, you'll be happy. If you just get that car, you'll be happy. If you just get that Porsche, you'll be happy. If you just get that house, or that wife, or that kids, or that husband, or those people, or those things, or that watch, or that computer, or that iPad, you'll be happy. But the people who get those things are not any more or less happy than anybody else. In fact, many people who have all those things are miserable. And I'm not one of the people who says that you shouldn't try to acquire possessions. I'm not. But your heart shouldn't be attached to them. There's nothing wrong with wealth. But if you are looking for wealth to satisfy your heart, you will always be sad. And the Prophet Muhammad has a perfect hadith. He says, chase water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. It doesn't satisfy. Allah says, now surely by Allah's remembrance are the hearts set at rest. If you really want tranquility, happiness, joy, remember Allah. Know your own soul and know other people and be of service to other people. That's the message. Now I want to give one final point, and this is called suffering with a purpose versus suffering without a purpose. Most people suffer, right? You have stress, you have anxiety, you have road rage, you get impatient in Boston traffic, right? You get upset on the T when there are delays. All of us have suffering of some sort. Physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. Like I mentioned before, Khalil Jaffer has an excellent series called The End of Negative Suffering, and I highly recommend it for everyone. It's a very good series. But he defines negative suffering not as physical pain or as emotional pain. You can't get rid of that, but he defines negative suffering as the loss of internal peace based on outward circumstances and things that happen in your life. The loss of internal peace. That's what he calls negative suffering. I think it's a good term. But some people experience suffering with a purpose, and some people experience suffering that has no purpose. Road rage has no purpose. Sorry to cut it to you, getting to the end of the story, right? Road rage does not have a purpose. You're not doing it for the sake of Allah. You're not doing it for the betterment of humanity. You're doing it because you're angry, and it doesn't feel good. So wouldn't it be nice to get rid of road rage? Like not feel that negative suffering? You cannot feel that negative suffering by going through this process of doing what we're talking about. Negative suffering is suffering without a reason. There is so much anguish in the world. Worrying about the fact that your brother or sister has more money than you do, worrying about who's prettier than you are, worrying about who makes more money than you do, who has a better title than you, how your boss is less qualified than you are. All of these are negative suffering. All of these are suffering that we experience that don't serve a purpose. They're not benefiting anyone. They're not bringing us closer. They're not helping. They're getting in the way. And if we could let go of them, we would be happier. But there is suffering with a purpose. There is such a thing as suffering with a purpose. A mother who sacrifices for herself for the love of her child is suffering with a purpose. A father who gives up his possessions to help others and to take care of other people is suffering with a purpose. Someone who comes and organizes this entire event and gets all the food and does all of this thanklessly is suffering with a purpose in service of others and in doing good. So there is a difference between suffering without a purpose and suffering with a purpose. And so I encourage you to try to minimize your suffering without a purpose and maximize your suffering with a purpose. But of course, the greatest example of suffering with a purpose is in the story of Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein was not suffering without a purpose. He had the loftiest of all reasons to engage in all of the suffering that he experienced and that his family experienced. He was standing up for truth. He was standing up for justice. He was bringing light back to the world when Yazid and his forces were trying to extinguish the light that was left. The light of Rasulullah, the light of Imam Ali, the light of Fatima al-Zahra. All of it was being extinguished, and he suffered. He suffered greatly with a purpose for the sake of Allah and for the sake of our ummah. For us today, 1400 years later, he suffered for our ability and our future and our hope and our livelihood. Imam Hussein then ordered his infant son Abdullah Ali Asghar to be brought to him so that he would say goodbye to him. Zainab brought him his baby son Abdullah Ali Asghar.